Flashcards. So I know it works for some people. What's your take on flashcards?
Do I have to give you the diplomatic answer, or do you have to?
You can give the answer you want. What are the key habits of a successful language learner? And is it about atomic habits, or is it something more to that?
Well, I would say that the most important habit is to learn to create systems that work for you. What do I mean by that? Well, I think that the single most powerful habit is simply to sit down and learn. Is it easy to do? No. Why is it not easy? Because most people misunderstand the concept of motivation. People tend to think, if I'm motivated, then I'm going to sit. Today I'm not motivated, I'm not going to sit. But actually, motivation does not lead to action, but action leads to motivation. Think about when you don't feel like doing something, and then all of a sudden you sit down and you actually do it, and then an hour goes by and you tell yourself, wow, like at the beginning I was not feeling it, and now I can't get enough of it and I want to continue. Why does that happen? Well, that happens because the starting point is the biggest point of friction. It's difficult to start something, but when you get into the groove of it, quote unquote, then everything gets easier, right? So how can you design your life? How can you design your routine so that you can sit down, you can overcome that moment of friction every day, you can sit down and make it happen? In my case, it's a number of factors. For example, I like learning first thing in the morning, right? I know that my energy is very high. I'm very fresh in the morning. Most people are like that, but not all people. Some people flourish and thrive at night. Well, I'm dead at night. I just want to go to bed and hit the sack. But knowing what your ideal time slot of the day is really important, because you can design your routine according to that. For example, if, say, you've been working for 4 hours and you like working on your language at lunch, during lunch break at work, and if you have the time, then do that. If you like waking up in the morning and hitting the books as soon as you wake up, do that. If you like working at night, do that. That's the first thing. So understanding what your ideal time slot is. The second thing is, as I was saying before, to design a system that allows you to sit down and start. And I use a concept in Tiny Habits and Atomic Habits, in particular Tiny Habits, which is another great book about habits, and it's anchoring. Anchoring means to anchor or link or connect a habit that you already have with another habit, which is the habit of language learning. Just an example. You wake up, you have breakfast, then you brush your teeth, right? Yeah. Having breakfast and brushing your teeth is normally two habits that most people have. Brush your teeth, guys. It's important for your health. So you can design a system, and you can, for example, write, after brushing my teeth, I will sit down and learn. And if you start doing that, it becomes a habit. The first 20 days, 30 days, 60 days, some people say 21, some people say 66 days, doesn't matter. The first time you do it, the first weeks, that's the most delicate part, because you have to get into the habit of it. Once you get into the habit of it, then you can tweak things. But if you get into the groove of it, if you get into the habit of it, then it becomes automatic. So if you know your time zone or your ideal time slot, and then you create this anchoring system, then you just start doing this every day. Then you have to design, of course, you have to think about, how long can I do this for? 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 45? What is my ideal time? When is my energy going to dwindle? When is my enthusiasm and energy going to taper off? And you can time your sessions. I have, if you see that the Pomodoro method, I have that. Well, people can't see it, but if you want,
we can grab it.
You can grab it. It's there. So, yeah. So you have this little thing here that you can use. This comes directly from the Pomodoro method. Some of you will know the technique. You can just set it up, and this allows you to understand how long it takes you to do certain things, how long it takes you to do a great learning session before your energy and your enthusiasm go down, etc., and then you can tweak on the go. So these three things aligned will help you design a system that allows you to learn every single day, and it's very powerful.
I think this can also be tied to the motivation of when you make in the new year, beginning of a new year, everybody says, oh, I'm going to learn this language in this year, but after a few months you fade away because you think, oh, I have time still left. But if you have a system, for example, if you make short-term goal of about 3 months, you can evaluate quicker what you did, and you can improve upon what didn't go well. So it's basically about making a system.
That's an excellent point. And to your point, I would also say that people tend to think in terms of goals. That's why we have New Year's Eve resolutions, or I have my lofty goal about hitting the gym and losing weight, etc., etc. That's totally fine to have a goal. It gives you a direction. But the problem of goals, especially yearly goals, and this is what happens with a lot of people. They say, oh, within a year I will be doing this. Is that a year is a long time. Life gets in the way. A lot of things can happen. A 3-month period is much more manageable because it's not short enough that you get into panic mode, but it's not long enough that so many things happen that derail your plan. That's the first thing. And the second thing, and I think it's much more important, it's the concept of focusing on the process rather than the goals. We live in a goal-oriented society where we tend to think, oh, we have this goal and that goal and that goal. But I think that the problem of goals is that if you have a goal, let's say in 6 months, that you want to speak Greek fluently, then every day you set yourself up for a disillusionment and not despair, but despair maybe is a big word, because you haven't reached that goal yet. Well, if you focus on the process, things are different because you win every day. To give you a very clear example, let's suppose that you've been learning Greek for some time, or Swedish, that's your case, for some time.
I've been learning Swedish for about 2 years now, but more actively recently, yeah.
But let's suppose that you've been learning Swedish for 6 months, right? And then it's January 2025, and you tell yourself, in 6 months, I want to go to Sweden and I will be speaking fluently, or I want to reach basic a good conversational level. That's fine, but to me, it's much more powerful to ask yourself this pivotal question: what do I have to do every single day in order to reach this goal? Because you cannot control the goal, you cannot control the end result, but you can control the process. What do you do every single day? So if you ask yourself, for every goal that you have, if you ask yourself, what is it that I have to do every single day to reach that goal? That changes everything. What do I have to do to reach basic conversational fluency in Swedish? To have 15 minutes of conversation with an app, like, for example, you've been using Langua, but it could be anything, to talk to your tutor, to use an app, to get into using the language and speaking the language. That is much more powerful. Do you want to understand better? You want to improve your listening comprehension? That's a very vague goal, but you can make it very concrete in terms of process, right? Once again, process-wise, if you tell yourself, what do I have to do to improve my listening comprehension? Listen to the language, listen to a series of podcasts every single day for 15, 30, or 45 minutes. That's way more powerful.
Yeah, so guys, make a system that works for you, that could bring you to your goals. I think that's the takeaway here.
Yes. System, habits.
Flashcards. So I know it works for some people. What's your take on flashcards?
Do I have to give you the diplomatic answer, or do you have to...
You can give the answer you want.
Okay. I think that flashcards can be a good tool if you find it rewarding, if you like it. A lot of people swear by it. A lot of people like it. They say they learn a language by using them. So if you like them, by all means do that. Use them, because I think it's one of the tools that you can use, one of the tools of your arsenal that you can use in order to learn a language. Personally, I've never used them. I've never felt the use.
You never use flashcards?
I've never used flashcards. I use the bidirectional translation system to understand, to get a very good grasp of the language. And then what I do mainly is listening to podcasts and watching videos in a very active way, taking notes, re-listening, trying different steps, going through the same podcast from different angles, so to speak. But I don't make lists. I don't compile lists of words. I never try to memorize words. I know this sounds ridiculous, because people tend to think, how do you memorize if you don't make an effort to memorize? That's what I said before. If you expose yourself to the language long enough, and you expose yourself to content that is enjoyable, that is rich in words that you don't know, for example, 20% of the words in a text you don't know, or 10%, it means that you're moving the needle, because you are being exposed to content you do not know.
And you're going to acquire these new words.
You acquire them, and why do you acquire them? Let me go back to what I was saying before. How do you acquire words without memorizing them? It all boils down to one thing. It's called acquisition. At the beginning of learning a language, at the beginning stages of learning a language, you do not have the infrastructure in your head in order to memorize. That is the reason why people tend to not everybody, but a lot of students tend to make the mistake of trying to memorize words when they do not have any infrastructure in their head. To give you a metaphor, maybe it's more you can visualize it. Imagine that you have a spider web. You have this room. There's a spider web. If the spider web is has a lot of spaces, right? So it's not very thick. Then words, flies, just fly around and they don't get stuck in the spider web. But the more you expose yourself to the language, the thicker the spider web becomes, and the words just get stuck in the spider web without you making an effort. So at the beginning stages, I mainly focus on trying to understand the language, not trying to memorize. But the more you expose yourself to the language, the bigger this language infrastructure grows in your head, and then words get stuck in the net, so to speak, automatically, because your brain identifies and already identifies, for example, certain parts of words, some root. Oh, this word is unknown, but I understand it from context, and also contains some other smaller words that I already know. So it becomes much easier to memorize things without doing anything when it comes
You're
to...
figuring out stuff.
Yes, and you do it holistically. Holistically means that you get exposed to content, and your brain picks up information always from context. While with flashcards, what happens normally is that a lot of time you tend to learn words from out of context.
It's just like a list of words, basically.
Not necessarily, because you can build flashcards, for example, by using sentences. You can take a text, you can extract pieces of information. But the problem with that, especially at the beginning, is that you do not have that infrastructure. I would use flashcards, for example, at a more advanced stage, intermediate stage. I think that could be useful. But I would always do it in conjunction with podcasts or videos. So I watch a video, I extract some words or pieces of language that I like, phrases, collocations, and whatnot, and then I can form a story with that, or I can create a summary. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't need. I've never used flashcards. I'm not saying that you do not have to use it. I'm just saying that if you use it the wrong way, in the wrong context, and at the wrong stage, then you run the risk of slowing down your progress, and sometimes it can even stifle your progress, because you think, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing all this work, so I'm making progress. Well, you're not making progress because you're focusing more on learning a language deliberately rather than acquiring. Acquiring is the base. Deliberate learning is good if it happens together with acquisition. That happens when you consume content in the language, massive content over a long period of time.
Yeah, so be an active spider and Vimeo web, so you'll get the word stuck.
Spider web, yes. Build your spider web.
Your spider. Next question is about 3 languages that you mentioned that you struggle with in your YouTube videos: Japanese, Serbian, and Romanian. So Japanese we talked about already. So if you would reflect back, what did not work for these 2 languages, Romanian and Serbian? What was the thing that made you struggle?
I would also include Danish.
Danish also? Okay.
I would say Romanian because I did not have any friends. I did not have any tie to the culture. I hadn't gotten interested in the culture, and that made a difference. That is not, going back to what I was saying before, not having a motive, not having a real compelling reason why to learn the language. Danish, I would say, because I got to know a Danish girl and I learned it just because of her. But when the relationship ended, I just lost the motivation, because the reason why I was learning it just faded away, right? Okay. So, and then I already knew Swedish, and I had other priorities. I was learning other languages and I had to make a choice. And as far as Serbian is concerned, I haven't dropped Serbian, but I just decided to put it on a pause. I've been learning it for 2 years, but this year in particular, I told myself, your time is limited, your energy is limited, you got a lot of stuff to do, you got a lot of fish to fry, you have to make a decision. So I decided to go all in when it comes to Turkish, learning Turkish every day, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, and then on and off, twice a week, learning Hungarian, because already learning 2 languages at the same time actively is a lot of work. So there's a lot of factors.
Okay.
And it depends on the language.
So could you just walk us through your morning routine, daily routine actually? What time do you wake up and how does your day unfold?
So I normally wake up at 5:30 or 6, depending on the day, depending on when I go to bed. Then I make my bed in Spile. Very important to make your bed because it gives you a structure. There's even a book that is called Make Your Bed by a general. It talks to you about, it helps you build discipline through the day. Oh, check. I've done the
You,
first
you,
thing.
you achieved something.
I've achieved
First
something.
achievement. Okay.
2 minutes. And then I have breakfast. And then I sit down. I journal for 45 minutes. So I write about my life, what happened the previous day. I have like these 10 categories of my life. It helps me. It's some sort of meditation. That's the first form of meditation. I pour into the Google Doc all the thoughts that I have. When you first wake up in the morning, you have a whirlwind of thoughts. So I put them on paper first, just jot down a few key things, and then I write on my Google Doc, and then I meditate for 30 minutes. I have three meditation sessions, 3 different meditation sessions, and then I basically start learning Turkish. So I do Turkish for 45 minutes, and then I start working. So I have my deep work, 4 hours, deep work, creative thinking, planning, working on my business instead of in my business. The difference is very important because working on your business is about strategy. Working in your business is about the tactical stuff, the operational stuff. When I have to upload a YouTube video or I have to write to colleagues, etc. And then after that, I have lunch. Then I have my reading session. I introduced recently a reading session also in the morning after meditation, and in between meditation and Turkish of 10-15 minutes of reading a book for growth, whether it's business, personal growth, etc. I have my second reading session after lunch. Then I have siesta. In Italy, we make siestas really important because I wake up very early, so 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I do the operational work. Operational is getting into emails, and because I try not to look at emails in the morning because it creates a lot of confusion. Emails and social media. I do that in the evening.
A lot of distraction. No?
Yeah, so I try to turn off my phone for the good part of the first part of the day. And then I possibly, if I'm not tired, I do some Hungarian or some Greek. I listen to something to relax for 30 minutes. Normally I watch YouTube videos because I got to the stage where I can just watch videos and enjoy the language while learning still a couple of words here and there. And then I have dinner. I have dinner, and then I either watch something on Netflix or on YouTube, and then I read for 30 minutes or 45 minutes before going to bed.
Okay, that's it. So it is repetitive all 5 days of the week, and in the weekends you have some more like freedom.
Rinse and repeat. I also do it on weekends. I've noticed that I'm going out less, especially when I'm in Rome, because I've noticed that if I stabilize my sleeping patterns, that helps me a lot. What happens in Western society, I think all across the globe, is that people tend to go out, which is their their choice.
Humans are social beings.
Well, you have to socialize, and when they go out, the problem is that when I go out, I'm talking about myself. I'm not talking about other people. Normally, what happens, or what happened before, is that you go out with your friends, you meet at 9:30 or 10, and then you get back at 2. You get a couple of drinks. I don't drink anymore, but back in the day, you get a couple of drinks, maybe a few drinks.
You're talking about alcoholic drinks.
Alcoholic drinks,
okay.
yes. And then your sleeping patterns are completely messed up, and it takes days. There's a famous book which is called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker that talks about this, and it completely disrupts the sleeping patterns. Sleep is not something that you can catch up with, meaning, oh, I slept for 3 hours tonight, Saturday night I had a lot of fun, and then on Sunday I'm going to sleep for 11 hours. It doesn't work that way. So it's a sacrifice, meaning that when I'm in Rome, especially for the first part of the year, I tend to stay at home a lot. I socialize with my friends, we go out on and off, but I try to stay at home as much as possible because that is very good for my health. I'm 44 as of now, at the time we're speaking, and I can see that health is taking priority. Maybe at 20 you don't care. At 30 still fine, but at 45 you tend to feel the consequences of your actions over decades. So it's a choice I make in order to be a better person, be healthier, learn languages, learn stuff. Because at the end of the day, for me, the real fun is when I learn. Of course, you have to socialize, but I do it sparingly. Twice a month, I go to a language exchange. I go back at 11. I try to stabilize patterns. When someone asks, when someone is thinking, how can I fix my life? I think the very first thing to do is to stabilize your sleeping patterns. It all starts from sleep, and then once you stabilize sleep, then you can stabilize and you can improve your eating patterns. If you don't sleep enough, you got a hormone which is called ghrelin, and you're much hungrier. So you don't sleep enough, you're sleep deprived, you are maybe overweight, you don't have any energy during the day, it all aligns, It's a vicious circle. Well, you can reverse that by taking care of the most important things and aligning the most important things that matter.
You prioritize your health, and especially, I think it's interesting that you reveal your lifestyle to your people who know you, and especially your fans. So it's something that you can think about. Just now we are talking a bit apart. I mean, we are going a bit off topic, the language, and talking about lifestyle and what you're doing. But especially the choice of avoiding alcohol you made is interesting, because it's also nuisance to your health, your liver.
Yes, but I don't think we're going off topic, because everything is connected. We tend to think the language learning is disconnected with health, but actually health is the very first thing. But if you're healthy, you have more energy. If you have more energy and you're not depressed, and your mind doesn't go places, is not all over the place, then you know what your priorities are. So everything aligns. When someone tells me, how can I improve my language learning? Actually, the very first thing I tell them when I do my coaching lessons is, how's your life in general? Because if your life is messed up, your language learning is going to be messed up as well. I read something that really struck me. I've been working as an entrepreneur for 4 years now. And that quote or that line was, if you want to fix your business, you have to fix yourself first. So if you want to fix your language learning, fix yourself first. Go back to the basics: sleep, nutrition, hydration, and everything is going to fall into place. You fix one thing, it's a good domino effect, and then all the other parts of your life are going to benefit from that one decision.
Yeah, I think so. I can completely agree with that. It's something
you concur.
I concur. It's something people take for granted, your health, and if you're in trouble, you can't have time to learn your languages. And
of course.
So that's I think you should prioritize the
mind and
health.
body.
Mind and body. Everything's connected. Everybody in the language journey reaches a plateau phase. So you are making a lot of work, but sometimes you feel stuck and you do not see the results immediately. Mm-hmm. So it's more or less in the B1 or B2 level before you get exposed to C1, I think. And how do you deal with this plateau, this break?
Well, how can I reply with a few simple terms? It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to try my best. In skill acquisition, when you acquire any skill, you have a law that is called the law of diminishing returns. This means, for example, that at the beginning you can learn very fast, and then you can put a certain amount of effort and you get certain results. But then the more you move into the higher stages, the upper echelons of language learning, what happens is that you put in the effort, but then you get diminishing results. So for the same amount of effort that you put before, the result is lower. And it comes to a point where you're putting a lot of effort and maybe you gain 2 inches, right? This is, for example, Olympic athletes, top level athletes, they compete for centimeters. They compete for the little, they work on the little details that make a difference. And in language learning, what normally happens is that at the beginning, everything seems fine in the sense that you're getting exposed to the language, you're learning words, but then at a certain point, there comes a point where you keep learning, but you don't feel like you're improving. That is the diminishing returns. It's a completely natural thing to do, to happen. So what do you do, right? What's the solution? Yeah. The solution is to keep tweaking things so that you keep yourself engaged and you keep working and operating within the so-called Goldilocks zone. Now, you're an astronomer, so you know what the Goldilocks zone in astronomy is. It's that let's say, place or a zone where a planet, is not getting exposed to the heat of the star too much. But if the planet is too close to the star, it melts. It's too hot. If the planet is too far, it gets really cold. And in language learning, this is called Goldilocks zone, or I think the technical term is the zone of proximal development, or something along those lines. And that is the zone where something is neither too easy nor too difficult, but is just challenging enough so that you do not get discouraged and you get excited because you learned new things. To give you a very clear idea of this, just to give an example, let's suppose that you're an intermediate learner and you've been learning, say, Spanish for quite some time. You understand podcasts, you understand videos, more or less, maybe 80%. But you want to improve, and you feel like you're stuck when it comes to vocabulary. You always use the same terms, the same words, you get exposed to the same stuff, and you feel like you're not improving vocabulary-wise. Let's talk about a specific aspect of language learning. What can you do in order to keep improving, to keep learning new vocabulary? Well, you can, for example, grab a book. Now, the problem with that is that a book can feel very difficult, because you open a book, maybe it's a technical book or it's even a novel, and all of a sudden for every page you find 15 expressions that you do not know. You get discouraged because that's too difficult, right?
Yeah.
So you can scale back and maybe find a book that you already read in your own native language that really helps understand the book better, because once you understand the plot and you know the book, you know that you like the book, you already read it, you're familiar with the content, the book feels a little bit easier. You can use a tool like, for example, Google Lens to scan the pages so that you can understand immediately. You can even play the audio in your own native language while reading in the target language. So you create the tools and the circumstances to do something that is slightly challenging and that allows you to learn to fill in the gaps that you have, vocabulary, grammar, etc., etc. I've given you just one example. So in a nutshell, you can design a strategy where you, for example, you want to improve certain aspects of your language learning. You want to improve your vocabulary, you can do this. You want to improve your speaking skills, you can get into a conversation with a tutor. Does it feel scary? Okay, I get a very nice tutor, very friendly, and I prepare the speech beforehand with words that I want to use during the conversation. That makes it easier. Still difficult, still challenging, but easier, not discouraging. So you design things depending on your circumstance, your level, your taste of what you want to do and what you want to focus on, and you implement this step by step. This Kaizen philosophy of improving 1% every time, and then slowly you will get better and better until you reach a level where something is going to click. I call it the Eureka Moment of language learning, where you reach B2, the language is yours, and then you've reached the peak of the hill or the mountain, and then the rest, the slope ahead, is easier because you're going down, you're still enjoying the language, but now it's easier. You can just consume content and keep learning.
So the key would be to do small progressive improvements, and in the end, like, you would overcome the plateau and reach the summit.
By staying within the Goldilocks zone,
yeah,
and by doing deliberate practice. Deliberate practice means to deliberately, purposefully sit down and actively learn in a way that engages you and challenges you, so that small challenges, so that you can keep improving.
What separates you from many polyglots is your fluency. You are fluent in many of the languages you studied. So how do you keep your fluency, and how do you maintain the fluency once you reach? Okay, some people reach the fluency, but after several years they sort of fall back. Or how do you keep your fluency?
So, first of all, I would say that there's a difference between understanding, comprehension, and the speech and the speaking skills. So, when it comes to understanding a language, once you understand it really well, it never goes away. You can even, not being exposed to that language for years, you still understand it. Well, unfortunately, your speaking skills degrade very fast if you don't use it. If you don't use it, you just lose it, as they say, right? So, in order to counteract this phenomenon, this natural phenomenon, what I normally do is that I tend to create the circumstances where I can get to use the language in a natural environment. So, for example, let's say, apart from exposing myself to the language, like watching the news, watching documentaries in multiple languages, reading newspapers, reading books, which is the base, again, for acquisition, then I tend to have a lot of friends. And when we go out, we can speak Spanish, we can speak French, German, at home we can speak Swedish or Greek. So I designed my life and I made choices so that I can use some language at home. I can use multiple languages at work, and I can use multiple languages in what I call the macro environment, meaning going out with friends. A lot of my friends here in Rome, and on top of that, of course, ça va sans dire, we have the internet. So sending voice messages, in Spanish and Swedish and in multiple languages on a daily basis or on a weekly basis to a lot of friends I have around the world. That allows me to use at least, let's say, 6 to 8 languages on a weekly basis. But of course, there are some other languages I don't get to use very often, and that is just natural. So let's say that 8 languages, I get to use them more or less on a weekly basis.
Okay, so you build your life, you create the life around the languages so you can get to use them so that you are exposed and constantly engaged with the language.
Yes, let's put it
Okay.
that way.
So if somebody happens to like join this video just by chance, like for the first time, and if you want to learn a new language for anybody, what is the key advice you have to give you for somebody who's just starting their first foreign language journey?
I would say get language learning material you like. For example, Asimo is one example, but I think you should get language learning material that contains dialogues, simple dialogues in the language. Forget about grammar books. Make sure that language learning material contains not only dialogues, but very lean, simple explanations of the grammar points that you will encounter in the dialogues. Make sure that you learn every day by following the rules there of the organization rules. And then know your why. Maybe that's the first one. You know your why you're learning a language is really important. Jot down your vision. How are you gonna use the language? With whom? In which circumstances? 2 years down the line. Make sure that you get language learning material to start with that is not grammar books, but it's dialogues in a simple language, and make sure you learn every day. These are the 3 things, if you align them, mindset, strategies, and organization, that will allow you to learn language no matter what happens. Of course, it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna take time. You're gonna find some obstacles along the way. It's only natural. There's a beautiful book which is called The Obstacle is the Way. So if you know why you're learning and you learn and you readjust and you find the method that works for you, you're going to be successful in learning a language.